Hello, happy Easter. Happy Easter Monday. Welcome to a live Kerfefe break with Keri Smith on the channel Deprogrammed. I just literally just got home from being running around this weekend and being out of town with family and had a really great, relaxing time and walked in the door. And now we're doing the show. And I'm happy to see you guys in the chat. If you're new here, this is a live show we do Mondays and Fridays. We just talk about what's in the news, what's on our mind. We hang out, we have some frivolity, and Night Train says if Carrie's channel gets much larger, we're gonna have to take half of the show for salutations. Okay. Yes. All the howdies, lots of howdies today. But howdy if you're new. If you're not, if you're returning deprogrammed community member, we have various ways to support the show. The best way to do so is to hit like or leave a comment that helps the algorithm so the videos get seen more if you like the content we do. And then also if you want to support us, we have a Patreon, a locals, a subscribe star, and here at YouTube we have members. Hello, the Front Porch Conservative. Look at your nice hat today. I had a great Easter hat yesterday. A lady's hat. It was more of a lady's hat than this Western one. So I hope you guys had a good Easter. I have one announcement before we get started. I figured out how to add this image. Look at this. Mindsfest is coming up this Saturday, April 15th in Austin. Minds.com is putting it on in partnership with Based Records. Based Records, if you haven't seen it yet, I got to do an interview with the founder of Based Records, Matthew Israeli, and it was very interesting. He's basically creating the first music company that I know of that supports free speech in this modern era, like in the culture that we're in now, that supports free speech and is trying to create a home for musicians who don't want to toe the line and go along with the establishment and whatever the establishment narrative is. And so that was really cool. Anyway, Base Records is putting this on along with Mindsfest, April 15th in Austin. I'm going to be hosting. There's going to be a ton of podcasts there, discussion, debate, comedy, and music. There are speakers like Peter Boghossian, Jack Posobiec, Luke Radowski, Libby Emmons from the Post Millennial, and Lee Fang, Daryl Davis, Ian Crossland. And there's also going to be music and comedy at this one. So I know Jamie Kilstein is doing some comedy. I know they have 3 bands performing, but you can get tickets and info at minds.com. And I hope to see you if you are in the Austin area or if you're visiting. Oh, thank you so much, Amy. Hey, Two Sisters in some Yarn. She put the ticket link in the chat. There you go. If you want that ticket link, there you go. Okay. Thank you guys. Okay, we'll get rid of that. I'm glad I learned how to put that up there, that image. Okay, so now we'll see if I can share a link. Now that I did that, stop sharing. Okay. So there's a couple things I was watching even on the holiday weekend. A couple things that were happening in Texas and one thing that's happening in Tennessee. And so let's just start with the Tennessee thing. I want to show you this guy. We're going to call him fake MLK because I think it's very obvious that he is doing a narcissist / sociopathic tactic, a con man tactic. Whether he is a narcissist or sociopath, I have no idea. I'm not saying he is. I don't know enough about him to say that, but this tactic is narcissistic and sociopathic. I call this the preacher. So narcissists and sociopaths, they mimic a lot. They do a lot of mimicry. Like an alien who's trying to mimic a human and blend in. And some of them are more convincing and successful at it than others. But you will see them ripping off not just people's words and ideas and beliefs, but they will also rip off their mannerisms, their manner of speaking, the way they dress. Look at Elizabeth Holmes. She didn't do the preacher, but she did mimicry. She dressed like Steve Jobs. she lowered her voice and spoke in a deep voice because she wanted to come off as more trustworthy. They alter the way they appear, and they mimic people who have characteristics that they would like to have. And this guy, a lot of people try and mimic MLK. A lot of people try and do the preacher and speak with his cadence. And I would argue that it's very obvious this guy, Justin Pearson from Tennessee, is doing that. In fact, if you look in the comments here on this tweet that I've got on the screen from Keith Boykin, who's a leftist, in the comments, you will see people going, he reminds me of MLK. Look at this. And they're saying it in an excited way. The familiarity of his voice, his passion in the deliveries of his words reminds me of speeches I've watched given by MLK and Malcolm X. Yeah, no shit. It's on purpose. Duh. Wow. He reminds me of MLK. Yes. This man is the MLK of our time, says someone else. There's several of these. There are some people now criticizing him, but there are several of these who are in a positive, like sort of like their surprised way or excited way. They're saying, he makes me think of MLK. Oh, I don't know what that is. And it's like, well, yeah, he is doing that on purpose. Okay, let's watch it. Oh, and first of all, this guy in the press, if you're not familiar with what's happening. So there were 3 Tennessee congressmen who participated in these protests, and they participated in them in the chambers, violating several rules, I guess. 3 of them. It was 2 black guys, 1 white woman. They were all Democrats, and they were participating in these anti-gun protests. And the Tennessee, they called a vote and said, because of their conduct, their disorderly conduct, we're voting to expel them. And so they took a vote on each of them. They voted to expel the 2 Justins. They're both named Justin. And they did not expel the woman. I think she kept her seat by just one mere vote. And of course, she's saying, "Look, I kept my vote, but obviously because of racism, and I'm a white lady, and these guys didn't keep their seat because of they're black." I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, why she kept her seat. But I do know that what happened to them is sort of, I don't know, I think it's sort of boring and pedestrian. And they voted to expel them. They've expelled people before for misconduct, and somehow the president got involved. Biden and Obama tweeted stuff, and now it's become a national news story. And they're really trying to turn these 3 Tennessee lawmakers into some kind of cult folk hero. They're trying to force this narrative. This guy in particular, Justin Pearson, is only 28 years old, but you're about to see how he does the preacher, the con man tactic very effectively. And so they're trying to turn them into some kind of folk narrative. I think that them getting expelled actually sucks because the Streisand effect happened, and now these guys are national news and people know who they are, and that's unfortunate. But here's my plea. They're calling them the Tennessee 3. And in some cases, when they're just talking about the Justins, they're calling them the Tennessee 2. Don't freaking call them the Tennessee 3. Don't do that. The Tennessee 3, the Tennessee 2, that was Johnny Cash's backup band, okay? That name is already taken. It's already been taken. And you're not about to steal it for some phony, propagandized, fake MLK, fake con artist, cult hero, forced narrative that you're trying to do. The Tennessee 3 is already taken. That probably offends me more than anything else. Okay. My husband's in the chat laughing. It's true. It's annoying. You can't just pretend like that name isn't taken. Okay, here, let's watch this guy.
Let me tell you about a persecuted people I know who still believe in a prophecy of a Jesus who tells us that even amidst persecution, even when amidst persecution, when they try and break it down into nothing, even amidst persecution, when they tell you that you're nobody and that you don't have a name, even amidst persecution, when they tell you there'll be nobody on your side, even amidst persecution, there is still a prophecy to believe that our days are still getting better because the Spirit of God has not left us nor forsaken us. Because indeed they lynched him on a Friday. Indeed, they thought they had all of it lost and all of the injustices gained on a Friday. They thought that it was all over on Silent Saturday. They said, finally, we don't have to hear anything else about gun violence. Finally, we don't have to hear anything else about poor people. Finally, we don't have to hear anything else about sick people. They were happy on Saturday. But, oh, God had a different plan to fulfill a prophecy to each and every one of us 2023 or so years later. That resurrection is always coming. Resurrection is a promise. Resurrection is a guarantee that no matter how dark the days are on that Friday, how sad those days are on Saturday, there's a promise that Sunday is always coming. Resurrection is always on the way. Resurrection is always promised. Let them beat, let them lynch, let them expel, let them kick out, let them do what they must. There's a promise that Sunday's resurrection is on the way.
Okay, so there's your fake MLK, Justin Pearson. I suggest that instead of calling them the Tennessee 2, the Tennessee 3, which again, as stated, don't culturally appropriate from Johnny Cash. That name's already claimed. Let's call them the two Justins. It's the two Justins, which sounds like a bad boy band. I like that better. So the two Justins, that one who's only 28 years old. I have no idea how intelligent he is, but I can tell you a 28-year-old doesn't have a lot of wisdom. And that kind of sermon coming from a 28-year-old, yes, somebody called it, several people called it right in the chat. It reminds me of those, I put it on the screen. Where's that comment? Somebody said it reminds them of those little kids. Here it is, Robert Payne. This sounds as fake as those preacher kids in tiny suits in some deep South churches who copy how their grandpappy preaches. Yes. In fact, I saw an old clip from, I think it was like Donahue or Maury Povich or something recently. And it was this little boy, this little white boy dressed up in a suit, and he was preaching just like his daddy, having no idea what he was saying. And this is what this reminds me of. It's mimicry. It's outright mimicry. I think it's insulting to the person they're mimicking because they're trying to rip off someone who's authentic and genuine. I think it's insulting to MLK. I think it's insulting to the audience. I think it's insulting to our intelligence that we can't tell that's what you're doing, that you've clearly studied this and you're trying to reproduce it to emotionally manipulate people. And I think his sermon is insulting to Christians. Here, look at this. Dan Trainer, have some respect for Johnny Cash. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Darkwater, does he know it's not the 1960s? Well, yeah, they know it's not the 1960s, but they really want to make young generations think it's like the 1960s or worse. They're pushing, part of this false narrative is that we are a white supremacist patriarchy, that we've always been a white supremacist patriarchy, and that we are today. And there are, if you ask people, look at surveys of Black people and white people and men and women, and ask them about the climate in terms of race, in terms of racism or sexism. They are suddenly, in like the past 10 years, people are suddenly saying, oh gosh, it's terrible. It's really terrible. It's not terrible. That's a result of this propaganda, this division they're trying to create. They are trying to convince people it's like the 1950s again, the 1960s for women and for Black people and for gay people. It's not. That thing we watched in the last episode, that sermon out of California with that terrible song's been in my head all weekend. We are a trans-supportive people, and we're singing for our very lives. You're not singing for your very life. You're not. You're not living in Iran. You're not living in the 1950s. Welcome to 2023, where people have adopted this false belief that we're in some kind of racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, oppressive society, in the most free society in maybe in history. I mean, can you think of any other place in time in human history? Maybe in some of the Scandinavian countries. They're maybe in some of those a bit more free than we are. I don't know. You guys in the chat can tell me. So catchy. Yeah, that song is terrible, but it's been in my head all weekend. Okay, so that guy, they're trying to make him into some kind of folk hero. Jules says, "Oh, the contrived quiver in the voice." Yes, it is insulting. I have to say he does it a bit better though than some. I want to show you another example of, just so you know what I'm talking about when I say the mimicry, the trying to copy the cadence and the way of speaking of someone else who's been popular. For example, Beto. It is very clear to me that Beto got lessons on how to try and sound like Obama. Very clear to me that he's trying to mimic Obama because Obama's popular. He wants to provoke that Pavlovian response. And as Dom said in the chat, I saw Dom said this MLK preacher cadence works very well on white women, and they know that. Yes, it does. It probably works the best on white women. Okay, I'm going to show you another example of the preacher that I think is a bad. This is where someone failed at doing it. I actually think this guy Justin, one of the two Justins, he succeeded because they're all excited about it and sharing it, and they're all saying, "Oh, he sounds just like MLK." So, I would say that was a successful run of the preacher, even though some of us can see through it. But here, this is a bad one. The left did not take this and run with it. At least I didn't see them run with it as much as they did the Justin. Because I think this was this was not a successful attempt at the preacher. This is AOC from just a couple months ago in February. And you can see I was saying the preacher works. It's a persuasive way of speaking, and I've seen many with bad ideology employ it effectively to make up for the inefficiencies in their ideas. Many try to ape the cadence of MLK, for example, but this isn't it. Okay, this is AOC trying to do the preacher, but I don't think she does it effectively.
Don't tell me that this is about a condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks when you have a member of the Republican caucus who has talked about Jewish space lasers and an entire amount of tropes, and also elevated her to some of the highest committee assignments in this body. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology when my life was threatened. Thank you.
She was trying to do it. Don't tell me. She was trying to do it, but she was stumbling over her words, so it doesn't come as naturally to her. And also, she didn't get rid of some of her sort of her, what would you call that accent? Like latte lady accent. So some of that was like, because I was still, like some of that was still in there. and it just didn't come off the same. Yeah. Flarful says, "What? LOL." Yeah, but that was really trying to do the preacher. And I know some of you in chat are mentioning Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's even tried to do it before. Michael Eric Dyson is someone who does it all the time. And Michael Eric Dyson does an extremely wordy kind of preacher. He adds in a lot of extra unnecessary words, I think, to make him try and make himself sound smarter. Not that you can't have a big vocabulary, of course, but he puts in it's almost too many descriptive words back to back to back, where it seems like he's trying to overload you so that you're like, oh, look at this great intellect. Let's see if we can find. I've got some other things I want to talk about, but before we get off the subject, I want to see if I can find the Hillary Clinton clip that some of you guys are talking about. Okay, let's see. YouTube's gonna make it very hard to find. You know this. Okay, I think I have it. Let's put this. Here we go. This is Hillary.
It is cast and made permanent. We have to stay awake. We have a march to finish. On this Lord's Day, let us say with one voice the words of James Cleveland's great freedom hymn. I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. And we know if we finish this march, what awaits us.
Now, to be fair, I'm about to say something in Hillary Clinton's defense. To be fair, she's quoting someone and she's putting on the accent for the quote, which is different, I think. She's not going out there and trying, like this Justin guy, trying to do a whole speech in this accent that's not hers and pretend like that's the way she talks. She's putting it on for the effectiveness of the quote, which I don't actually really have a problem with, but it is funny. It still makes me laugh. I get why people laugh at it, but it's just for the quote. If I could do accents for quotes, I would. I'm very bad at accents. My husband's pretty good at them, but I can't do a British one or anything. Yes, it's Black Voice, Two Sisters and Sweetheart. I agree, but she's putting it on for the quote. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Dom, it's different because she's quoting. Yes. However, I do think when she talked about having hot sauce in her bag, she was trying to pander. That was another example people often bring up. Darkwater says, I'm no fan of Hillary, but it's one of her more endearing moments. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a different perspective. I can get down with that. I don't feel in no ways tired. Again, she's quoting someone. She's not doing a whole, like, fake persona with that accent, which would be really funny if she did. If she suddenly started speaking that way. Like when Madonna put on the British accent all of a sudden, she became like British all the time. And my husband says, I think you're letting her off the hook because she's a white woman. No. Just like the other lady in Tennessee. No, it's a strange day when I defend Hillary Clinton, but you know, I'm trying to be impartial. To be fair, one quote. Okay. Okay, there's something else I want to talk about. If you guys have some topics, feel free to throw them in the chat. There's a couple things that happened in Texas that I wanted to bring up. And let me see here. I'll just I'm going to bring up the Daniel Perry case. So this just happened in Austin. This is a Texas story. I don't know if you guys remember this in 2020 at a Black Lives Matter rally. There was an Army sergeant who shot and killed a protester who was also a veteran. The guy that he shot and killed, I believe his name is Garrett Foster. Both white guys, not that it should matter, but I just want to get that out there because I've seen a lot of people on the left who think that the guy who was killed is black. And I think that's in part, they believe that, because because a lot of the leftist media is implying that, and they want them to think that. I think they're trying to plant that idea in the minds of people. In fact, I just saw a post this morning from someone in a leftist group I'm in that was like, you know, uh, the fact that Governor Abbott says he's going to pardon Perry is basically, you know, what did they call it? A death threat for all Black protesters. And it went on and on about what is this message for Black protesters? And I'm like, anybody reading this obviously has no idea that they're not going to come away with the knowledge that the person who was shot and killed, the protester, was white. They're going to come away thinking he was Black because of the way this post is written. And I think that's being done on purpose. So again, the race of the people involved doesn't matter, but to the left it does. To the left it does, and they want you to think that the victim was Black for some reason. Why do you think they would want you to think that? Well, if you're part of an ideology where race matters, you would want the narrative would be better if the person killed were in one of the quote unquote oppressed or marginalized races. So you could say, look, it was racism. So they want people to think. And I've seen people on Twitter saying, why doesn't this story mention that the guy who was killed was Black? Because he wasn't Black. He was actually a ginger. Okay. So here, let's bring this up. A couple things about this is the most important thing about the Daniel Perry case. In my opinion, the guy in the car, Daniel Perry, is an Uber driver. He was driving through Austin during these 2020 Black Lives Matter rallies. His car, he stopped his car in the middle because the protesters had flooded the street, which they're not allowed to do. They were blocking traffic, which they're not allowed to do. He stopped his car. They surrounded him. This guy here in the red circle, this is the protester, Garrett Foster. Here, I'm going to bring up something about him too. Am I getting his name wrong, guys? Correct me in the chat if I am. Garrett. Sorry, Garrett Foster. That's his name. Okay. So this guy here in the red, you can see he had a rifle. He was armed with an AK-47. And a lot of the people on the left are saying, well, there wasn't a round in the chamber. There wasn't a round in the chamber. Excuse me? Does that matter? No. When a rifle's being pointed at you, do you know if there's a round in the chamber or not? No. First rule of gun safety, don't point a gun. Treat every gun as if it's loaded. Treat every gun as if it's loaded. What's the second rule? I think it's the second rule. Don't point your gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. You can see this guy had his gun, his rifle in the low ready position, aiming it down at the driver in the car. So Daniel Perry, Sergeant Perry in the car with his handgun fired, I think it was 5 rounds, defending himself, killed this guy. Someone else in the crowd, we watch the video, which we can do, fired 3 rounds. You can hear 3 more rounds being fired at the car, but did not hit Perry. So an Austin jury just found him guilty of murder for defending himself. And the left is up in arms because Governor Abbott has said he's going to pardon him because it was self-defense, which I agree with. Defense expert witness Jason Evans, this is an engineer that they called to the stand. Defense expert witness Jason Evans said 3D technology showed that Garrett Foster was standing at an angle with one foot in front of another in front of Daniel Perry's car window. The angle is known as a bladed stance, which is a position police take when confronting a criminal. We call it the modified Weaver position also. The defense is playing videos of Capelson testing how quickly Foster could have shot Perry with the rifle in that low ready position, average time 0.206 seconds. We're watching them in slow motion now. One of the demos showed that Foster could have shot Perry in less than 0.2 of a second. Quote, "These bullets could go right through a car door," Capelson remarks. So Foster would not have had to bring the rifle all the way up to the window even. Of course not. Same idea with the crossbody carry position, average time 0.282 seconds. Look, you can carry in Texas, but if you point your gun at someone, you threaten them with deadly force, they have every right to defend themselves with deadly force against you shooting them and murdering them. So I understand why people are upset about this, and rightly so. I think this is much bigger. This case is much bigger than Daniel Perry, than Sergeant Perry, who was found guilty. If Abbott didn't pardon him, I think it's sending a message that you can't defend yourself against deadly force in Texas. Derp says, "We're living in a clown world." Yes. I'm going to show you something else. So this is something else everybody's talking about in relation to this case. This guy, the DA. So everybody's calling him a Soros DA because I guess he's received funding from Soros. I don't really care, but you can trace that if you want to. But here's something I am interested in. The lead detective has created an affidavit. There's an affidavit now of David Fugit in which he says that he was pressured by the DA's office to remove exculpatory evidence from his testimony. And let's put this on the screen. So we're going to look at his affidavit. So you can see this tweet here from Marina Medvin. In the Daniel Perry case, read the affidavit from the lead detective claiming that the Soros DA directed him to, quote, remove exculpatory information that I had intended to present to the grand jury during my testimony. And I read through this today. He says, prior to the grand jury presentation, in this case, I had several conversations with the DA's office regarding the presentation of exculpatory evidence related to Daniel Perry. It became clear to me that the DA's office did not want to present evidence to the grand jury that would be exculpatory to Daniel Perry and or to show that witness statements obtained by the family of Garrett Foster and or their attorneys were inconsistent with prior interviews that such witnesses gave the police and or the video of the incident in question. The DA's office didn't even want video being shown to the grand jury, and they didn't want any evidence being shown to the grand jury that the witnesses had changed their statements. He says, I also wanted to present previous statements from the complainant in count 2, where she never once suggested that Daniel Perry intentionally and knowingly threatened her with imminent bodily injury by driving a motor vehicle in her direction. So a bunch of these witnesses ended up changing their statements and saying, oh yeah, he was like speeding toward us in the car, which is not what the expert testimony says, what the engineers say. They say, no, he was going 11.9 miles per hour and then he slowed down to a stop. But if they can get the witnesses to say, yeah, he was speeding up, then they can say, look, he was the one acting with aggression. He was coming at us with a car. So we had to raise the rifle at him to defend ourselves. That's not what happened. So this lead detective is saying, I wasn't allowed to present this information. He says, on more than one occasion, I was directed by the Travis County Attorney's Office to remove exculpatory information that I had intended to present to the grand jury during my testimony. At that point, I specifically asked if there would be ramifications if I did not do so. I was told by the assistant DA that he would ask the DA what would happen if I refused to agree to the limitations I was being ordered to comply with. I was later sent an email that simply reaffirmed the exculpatory subjects I was forbidden from mentioning during my testimony. Of my original 158 slide PowerPoint presentation, the presentation was reduced to 56 slides with almost all of the exculpatory evidence ordered removed. I felt like I did not have any other options but to comply with their orders. This is witness tampering. So he's come forward and been willing to sign an affidavit to that effect. A bunch of leftists on Twitter, including, gosh, that lunatic, what's his name? Keith Olbermann. A madman. They're all saying, oh, Abbott, you intend on pardoning him. I guess you're okay with murder in Texas. No, murder is what could have happened had Sergeant Perry not defended himself against the threat of deadly force against a rifle in his face. I don't know. This one burns me up. Let's see if you guys. Duke Devil says it's important to remember that is just the grand jury testimony as opposed to the actual trial. Yes, that's a good point. I think the point they're making is that it may not have been brought to trial if the grand jury had seen that exculpatory evidence. They may not have even brought it to trial. Duke Devil 95. If exculpatory evidence was withheld on the trial level, that is a completely different matter. Yes, I agree. Dan Trainer, a murder was prevented. It could have been. If you say that though, then they say, which I've seen happen on Twitter, yeah, but there wasn't a bullet in the chamber. Again, you don't know that when someone's pointing a rifle at you. Excuse me, sir, is that gun you have in my face loaded? Could you tell me? Okay, so that's one of the Texas things I wanted to talk about. And here's the other. Let's see. So a lot of states now, I think that the lines are being drawn in the sand, is the way that one of my friends put it. As a result of this crazy culture war that we're in, this woke culture war, the ideology that's been spreading through entertainment, politics, the media, academia. As a result of that, a lot of states are now choosing to come out and pass laws banning things that you would think are already illegal or should be considered illegal under existing law. But some states want to get really clear about this. And so the Texas Senate just passed 5 different bills. These now move to the House. The Attorney General has said, Ken Paxton has said this is of utmost priority to the governor, these bills. I think everybody should read the full text of these themselves. I went through and read these. If we have time, I guess we have time. It's only 45 minutes in. We could look at some of them because it's really interesting. And a lot of times people don't read the full text, and we just read, no matter what side you're on, we just read what we're told about them. So these are 5 bills that were just passed in the Texas Senate. They've SB 12 and 14. So SB 12 bans sexually explicit drag shows for kids. And I read this. It's very, very specific. It doesn't even ban all drag shows for kids. They went in and amended the language and were very specific to ban any sexually explicit performance, drag or otherwise, like strip shows, obviously. Doesn't have to be drag. And they go in and they specifically define what kind of acts, like simulated sex, simulated orgasm, stuff like that in performance that are not allowed for kids. And I think they did so because they knew that leftists were going to say, all drag isn't sexually explicit and this is just anti-drag. And they're like, okay, we're going to try and be very clear. And the problem is the left is still going to say that. They're still going to say, this is an anti-drag bill. They're still going to say that because they're not going to read it. So SB 12, I'm going to pull it up. We can actually look at it. Then SB 14. SB 14 bans what's being called, this Orwellian speak, gender affirming care for anyone under the age of 18, for any minor. So basically no medical or surgical intervention for kids until they're old enough to consent to such things. Why do you think we might be banning that? The same way that Scandinavian progressive countries have now banned it. Norway, Sweden, Finland have banned it. Why? Because kids are not capable of deciding whether or not they want their genitals cut off, whether or not they want to have kids in the future, be permanently sterilized. Like, they're not capable of consenting to that. I know that you give them the consent forms. I've read the consent forms from some of the medical clinics where you have little kids consent to, this might sterilize me for life. Okay, I'm cool with that. What child can do that legally? They can't. And so SB 14 that just passed in the Texas Senate would ban that for children, for anyone under the age of 18. I've already seen leftist organizations like the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, putting out statements about this. And lo and behold, guess what they leave out when they talk about SB 12 and SB 14? One of the biggest things they leave out. They don't say for kids. They leave it out. They say SB 12 bans drag shows. It's a ban on drag shows. So where will we get our drag? It doesn't ban drag shows. You can still go to a drag show. It bans sexually explicit shows, including sexually explicit drag shows for children. For children. That's kind of important. For children. And then SB 14, the HRC says, oh, it bans gender affirming care. Where can we get our surgeries and our hormones? It bans it. It bans it. No, it bans it for children. For children. Very important caveat there that you're leaving out so that you can purposefully make people hysterical and get them to repeat things that aren't true. Because you're hoping people will just spread that around, which happens. It does happen. And then next thing you know, your friend, your well-meaning friend on Facebook who's in that leftist echo chamber is telling you, they just passed a bill banning drag in Texas. No, and you have to tell your friend, no, they didn't. They just banned it for kids. And they're like, really? Because I thought it was for all drag. And anyway, this is what they're doing. Derpnator, I'm glad you're laughing. It's exactly what they're doing. They just passed a bill banning gender affirming care in Texas. No, they didn't. They didn't. Don't worry, friend in leftist echo chamber. They banned it for children. Here, let's pull up a couple things. Let's talk about, let me finish telling you the 5 different bills in Texas, and then we'll read some about 12 and 14. SB 15. They also passed this in the Texas Senate. They banned biological men, from competitive women's sports at public schools. Basically, if you go to a public school and you have competitive sports, like NCAA competitive sports, what have you, you are not allowed to compete against biological women. Now, if we didn't have sex segregated sports, we wouldn't need this. Okay, if we want to go to a society that doesn't have sex segregated sports, at least then we'd be intellectually consistent. But if we're going to have sex segregated sports and we're going to say, no, it's most fair for women to compete against women and men to compete against men for scholarships, for awards, then you can't be like, hey, we're going to segregate sex unless you say that you identify as this other sex, and then we'll just let you do whatever you want. No, you can't do that. Men have a biological advantage over women on average. Men have a biological advantage. It's amazing that we have to pass laws for things that should be common sense, but that's the age that we're living in now, is this common sense isn't common. I also wish we didn't have to pass a law saying, hey, if it's a sex segregated sport and you're receiving public, meaning taxpayer money, then men can't compete against women. We shouldn't have to pass that law, but here we are. Here we are. Okay, the other one, SB 162, bans any gender markers other than male or female on birth certificates. So that means if you can't have a baby, you can't be like, oh, my baby's not binary. My baby's other, which is what a lot of these woke parents are now trying to do. Child abuse, in my opinion. You have to actually put male or female. You can't put dragon or other or they, them, non-binary, none of that. Okay. That's SB 162, also passed. Okay, here's the fifth one. SB 1601. This one bans all drag queen story hours from public libraries. If you're a public library, if you are not a private library, but a public library, taxpayer money, they're saying you can't have drag queens come in and do drag queen story hour for children. This is maybe going to be the most controversial. We're going to read through some of these. I think these are great. I'll just tell you my opinion right off the bat. I think they're great. Do I wish we didn't? Am I begrudgingly being maybe pulled along to be supportive of some of these bans? Yes. Do I wish we lived in a place when we didn't need these bans? Yes. A time and place and a culture, yes. But here's why I support them. We are being inundated in Texas with cultural missionaries. We're receiving cultural missionaries and cultural refugees. These are two different groups. A lot of them are coming from California. What's happening is that our property prices are going up. It's becoming very expensive. The cost of living is going up. But most importantly, the culture is changing. Look at places like Austin, where a lot of these cultural missionaries are moving. It's becoming like LA. I went through there with Misty Chris the other day. He hadn't been down there in a while. It's crazy. It reminds me of LA in so many ways. Like Skid Row, the poverty of Skid Row in LA compared with the opulence and the wealth of Rodeo Drive. And in Austin, that's 6th Street and Congress Avenue. That's what it's becoming, like Skid Row and Rodeo Drive. Where in LA, you pretty much, to live there, to be able to afford to live there, you have to either be homeless or very wealthy, like no middle ground. And we drove by what used to be the Buffalo Billiards. Like a lot of the businesses, a lot of the historic Austin businesses went out of business the past few years. Of course they did, because of lockdowns, unconstitutional lockdowns. And Austin didn't behave like the rest of Texas. Austin was very much like, we're going to shut everything down. Okay, well, you're going to lose your business. So the Alamo went under, Buffalo Billiards. Buffalo Billiards has a huge mural that probably white people painted, and it says, all Black lives matter. And underneath it, there is a growing number of Black homeless drug addicts and people passed out, like the saddest state of affairs you've ever seen. A growing number of people. And Mystery Chris was with me, and he was like, wow, and they're all Black right under that sign. It's kind of crazy, right? Yeah. And what are the up on Congress Avenue are the cultural missionaries, the white latte sipping lefties, the limousine liberals. What are they doing about the growing rates of homelessness and poverty and drug addiction in Austin on 6th Street in particular? Primarily, probably disproportionately affecting Black people. What are they doing about it? They're passing policies that they think are well-intentioned, but don't actually help people. They're passing laws that actually create more homelessness. Oh, we want a tent city. They should be able to put up tent cities, not in my backyard, but in this area on 6th Street, they should be able to live in tents. Why would you want anyone living in a tent? Why wouldn't you pass laws that encourage them, that give them incentives for getting out of that state, for actually helping people? So there's 2 groups of people moving here from California. As I said, I'll get back to my point. The cultural missionaries and the cultural refugees. The cultural refugees are the people like Gary from Rhetoric, who I absolutely adore. I'm so happy he moved here. He is a Texan at heart, I think. And these are people who have had it with the leftists in places like California, making the state unlivable. And they're trying to move somewhere with better values and with a place that shares their values, a place that supports individualism, conservatism, liberalism. And so I fully support cultural refugees coming here. I think we need more of you. The cultural missionaries, the woke who are coming, they're the ones who come in and think they're going to change Texas. We need to change Texas. We need more California and Texas, if you know what I mean. I've had someone say that to me. No, we don't, actually. And we didn't ask for you to come here and lecture us and look down your nose at us. We don't need missionaries. We don't need cultural missionaries. I saw a lot of these people after Beta lost for the 3rd time saying on Twitter, they were all like, I'm going to move back to California. Well, I don't know if you did or not. You probably didn't, because a lot of times you people say stuff you don't mean. But I hope you did, and I fully support that. We don't need cultural missionaries. And so all of this to say, passing these 5 bills that I know the left, I've already seen the left is interpreting as very extreme, and they're misinterpreting it, and they're calling it anti-gay, and they're calling it anti-trans, and it's not, and they're calling it anti-drag, and it's not. Let them have their hysterical outrage. Let them. My message to them is, please go tell your California friends how backwards we are here and how conservative and crazy right-wing we are. Please run with it. Let them know. Let them know what they would be coming to. It is a backwards, patriarchal, handmaid's dystopian nightmare here. I got to put on my handmaid's outfit in 170-degree weather on an average day. And just to go outside, I have to ask my husband for permission. And then I got to wear that handmaid's outfit just to go to the store. And they don't let me read. I have to look at cards. If I'm buying peaches, I have to look at for a picture of a peach. And they look kind of like apples. It's really hard. Plus, we eat crawfish here, which are basically creek roaches. It's horrible. Don't come here. Spread the word. Californians, you don't want to eat creek roaches. Okay. It sounds awful, says Duke Devil. Just like Florida, so don't come here. Also, we got gators and pythons. We have huge spiders here. Awful. Awful spiders. Okay. Let's look at SB 12. I realize this isn't helping my cause to look at the actual bill. If we look at it, we're going to dispel some of the myths that they're saying about it, the hysterical myths, and we want to encourage those, right? So they don't come here. Hold on, this is pulling up an old SB 12. Thank you guys for hanging out today. Can you see that? Nope. Let me stop. My husband's in the chat. He says, Keri, I revoke your permission to go to the store after the show. But I gotta go get some creek roaches. That's what we eat here in Texas. We even have creek roach boils. They call them crawfish boils. And people eat corn on the cob. Okay, here we go. I apologize for making you guys wait. I thought I should have had this pulled up, but we just got in from out of town. Okay, can you see this? Ta-da-da. I think this is it. Oh no, just pulled up in this window. Here we go. This is SB 12. Is that on the screen? Good. No, it's in a different window. Okay, hold on. Sorry for the boomer moment. Okay, there we go. Finally on the screen. A bill to be entitled an act relating to restricting certain sexually oriented performances on public property, on the premises of a commercial enterprise, or in the presence of a child, authorizing a civil penalty and creating a criminal offense. Sexually oriented performances definitions. Sexually oriented performance has the meaning assigned by Section 4328. Certain sexually oriented performances prohibited on premises of commercial enterprise, civil penalty injunction. A person who controls the premises of a commercial enterprise may not allow a sexually oriented performance to be presented on the premises in the presence of an individual younger than 18 years of age. A person who violates this section is liable to the state for a civil penalty of not more than $10,000 for each violation. So they're going to fine you $10,000 if you're a business that allows sexual performances in front of children. Now here, this is where they define sexual conduct, sexually oriented performances, and they get very, very specific because they're hoping, hey, maybe rational adults will actually look at the bill and see what it is that we're banning and see that we're not even banning all drag shows with children in the audience. We're not. We're banning sexually oriented performances of all kinds, including drag. And here we go. Here's the definition. Sexual conduct means A, the exhibition or representation, actual or simulated, of sexual acts, including vaginal sex, anal sex, and masturbation. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't be doing that in front of children. B, the exhibition or representation, actual or simulated, of male or female genitals in a lewd state, including a state of sexual stimulation or arousal. Don't do that in front of kids. The exhibition of a device designed and marketed as useful primarily for the sexual stimulation of male or female genitals, like, for example, a dildo. Don't do that in front of kids. Actual contact or simulated contact occurring between one person and the buttocks, breast, or any part of the genitals of another person. Don't do that in front of kids. Sexually oriented performance means a visual performance that features a performer who is nude, as defined by Section 102, a male performer exhibiting as a female, or a female performer exhibiting as a male who uses clothing, makeup, or other similar physical markers, and who sings, lip syncs, dances, and or otherwise performs before an audience, or any other performer who engages in sexual conduct. Okay, so this is the part here that makes it, I will agree, sexual oriented performance, this part here. So cross-dressing performers. That is a bit broad. Let's continue. Appeals to the prurient interest of sex. A person who commits an offense if, regardless of whether compensation for the performance is expected or received, the person engages in a sexually oriented performance on public property at the time, in a place, and in a manner that could reasonably be expected to be viewed by a child, or in the presence of an individual younger than 18 years of age. I want to go back up to this part that I'm finding a little broad. Let's read this section again. You guys might see me in real time changing my mind about this particular part of the bill. Let's see. Because I had read where they had defined the sex acts, but here we go. Sexually oriented performance means a visual performance that features a performer who's nude, a male performer exhibiting as a female, or a female performer exhibiting as a male, who uses clothing, makeup, or other similar physical markers, and who sings, lip syncs, dances, or otherwise performs for an audience. That is very broad. Okay, this does target all drag performances for children. This does. All drag performances for children. No children at any drag show. I'm still okay with it because I don't want you coming to Texas. That's how I feel. Maybe I'll change my mind. Yarn Witch says, LOL, we're on this journey too, Keri. Surly Unicorn says, good. Yep. Okay. We've read through that one. Let's read through SB 14. SB 14. Okay. Adding this one to the screen. Now I figured out how to do it. Okay, this is Texas Bill SB 14, which just passed the Senate, is going to the House. A bill to be entitled, an act relating to prohibitions on the provision to certain children of procedures and treatments for gender transitioning, gender reassignment, or gender dysphoria, and on the use of public money or public assistance to provide those procedures and treatments. The Child Health Plan may not provide coverage for services prohibited by Section 161.702 that are intended to transition a child's biological sex as determined by the child's sex organs, chromosomes, and endogenous profiles. Here we go. Gender transitioning and gender reassignment procedures and treatments for certain children. In this subchapter, child means an individual who is younger than 18 years of age. Healthcare provider means a person other than a physician who is licensed, certified, or otherwise authorized by the state's laws to provide or render healthcare or to dispense or prescribe a prescription drug in the ordinary course of business or practice of a profession. They go on to define Medicaid and physician. Prohibited provision of gender transitioning or gender reassignment procedures and treatments to certain children. For the purpose of transitioning a child's biological sex as determined by the sex organs, chromosomes, and endogenous profiles of the child, or affirming the child's perception of the child's sex, if that perception is inconsistent with the child's biological sex, a physician or healthcare provider may not knowingly perform a surgery that sterilizes the child, including castration, vasectomy, hysterectomy. I don't know this word. Oophorectomy. What's an oophorectomy? Oh my goodness. I'm not even going to read any of these. Phalloplasty or vaginoplasty or oreectomy. I think that's where they also cut off the penis. They may not perform a mastectomy. They may not provide, prescribe, administer, or dispense any of the following prescription drugs that induce transient or permanent infertility: puberty suppression, or blocking prescription drugs to stop or delay normal puberty, supraphysiologic doses of testosterone to females, or doses of estrogen to males. They may not remove any otherwise healthy or non-diseased body part or tissue. Yeah, that's because on the girls, when they create the fake penis, which I won't show you a picture of, but it is terrifying. It looks like a Frankenstein. It looks like a stump. They cut off part of the tissue and the skin on the arm to cover that thing. And it sounds grotesque. It looks grotesque. So I guess this part 4 is here to prevent them from doing that. Hey, like on a child, don't remove their arm in order to create a fake penis. Okay, so then they have this section called exceptions. This does not apply to the provision by a physician or healthcare provider with the consent of the child's parent or legal guardian of puberty suppression or blocking prescription drugs for the purpose of normalizing puberty for a minor experiencing precocious puberty. Yes, so precocious puberty is something that they used to prescribe these same puberty blockers for, or they would prescribe some of these hormones for, and they would do it in a short dose for a limited amount of time. They weren't putting on these kids on this indefinitely until they could put them on cross-sex hormones. So it's saying, hey, if you're treating precocious puberty, okay. Appropriate and medically necessary procedures or treatments to a child who is born with a medically verifiable genetic disorder of sex development. Here they have it. They have an exception for intersex people, and you will see the trans activists, the woke people who claim to speak on behalf of trans people. They want to use intersex as like a Trojan horse. They use intersex people. Well, so this bill carves it out. Hey, if you're intersex, then this doesn't apply to you. So a person who's born with a medically verifiable genetic disorder of sex development, including 46 XX chromosomes with virilization or 46 XY chromosomes with undervirilization, or both ovarian and testicular tissue, or does not have the normal sex chromosome structure for male or female as determined by a physician through genetic testing, well, then this bill doesn't apply to you. It does not apply to intersex. Then they have a section here about public money, meaning taxpayer money. Our tax dollars may not be directly or indirectly used or granted or paid or distributed to any healthcare provider, medical school, hospital, physician, or any other entity, organization, or individual that provides or facilitates the provision of a procedure or treatment to a child that is prohibited in this bill. Good. Because I don't want my tax dollars going to pay for the mutilation and sterilization of children, of healthy children. The commission may not provide Medicaid reimbursement, and the child health plan program established by Chapter 62 may not provide reimbursement to a physician or healthcare provider for provision of a procedure or treatment to a child that is prohibited under this ban. I'm on board with this. You guys can read the whole thing. Here, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Scott Miller, I can remember when the trendiest thing was Cabbage Patch Kids. Now it's cutting off a kid's genitalia. WTF. Yes. Twee Girl, the difference between Texas and my province, Quebec, is like night and day. It is. And you know what, Twee Girl? I think, like I mentioned, the lines are becoming drawn. And I do have a fear that the response to some of this craziness is going to be a little out of hand. I think it could get a little out of hand, and I have a fear of that. And it makes sense that it would, though. And I think people are going to start moving. There's going to be more of these cultural refugees going both directions. Like the people who want to be able to sterilize children and mutilate children, they're going to be moving to places like Quebec and like Canada. Let them. You can't do that here. And if you're not on board with that, you are welcome here. Derpnator, my question has not been answered. Why would anyone want to mutilate their or anyone else's perfectly working genitals? Well, the thing is with a lot of these, because this part of woke has become so popular now, this gender ideology part, the children, first of all, children I don't think they're not capable of understanding what it is they're consenting to. They're not capable of understanding that they're permanently mutilating their genitals or maybe permanently sterilizing themselves. If you look at some of the detransitioners who are speaking out now against this, and some of them are suing the hospitals, the medical establishment, which they should, and their parents, they should. They are saying, I didn't have a concept of what I was doing. Like some of these young women, they're adults now when they got mastectomies as kids, and they're like, I'll never get my breast back. Like that did not occur to me. One of the whistleblowers at one of these trans clinics for kids, she said one of the girls called like not long after the surgery and was like, I want my breast back. Like not having an understanding of what they're agreeing to. The adults should know better. The medical establishment should know better. The lawmakers should know better. The parents should know better. And I fully support these kids who become young adults and sue their parents for not protecting them. Take them to the cleaners. Because what your parents allowed to be done to you, it's child abuse. Your parent is supposed to protect you. Yarn witch, it's our job as adults to protect them, and we're failing. As a society, though, we're going to win. We are going to win. The progressive countries are already banning this for kids under 18 because it's barbaric. We're just behind the curve, but we're gonna catch up. We're banning this barbarism, and the people who supported it are going to pretend like they never did. They're going to pretend like, well, how could we have known? Like they did with COVID policy. But woke is going to lose. It's just a matter of how many people, how many lives it destroys on the way there. They don't defend this outright because they can't. They can't. How can you defend sterilizing and mutilating kids? You can't. That's why they do things like they pretend, like SB 12 and 14 that we just read through, they pretend like it's not about children. In the speech we watched in the last episode of Kerfefe Break here on Deprogram, they left out the part it was about kids. They leave it out on purpose because they can't defend it. That's why they're going to lose. It's indefensible to do double mastectomies on children, to castrate kids, to permanently sterilize them. They can't. They can't consent to this. There are so many things in the society we protect kids from, that we both protect children from, and we protect society from kids in different ways. We don't allow kids to drink. We don't allow them to smoke, to drive a car, to buy a gun, to shoot a gun, to drive or to own a gun. We don't allow them to serve in the army. We don't allow them to have sex with adults. We don't allow them to get a tattoo. And yet, this new cult, this new child mutilating, sacrificing religion wants us to believe that kids are capable of choosing to permanently make the decision whether or not they'll ever be able to have children or to remove their genitals, or kids are capable of deciding if they'll ever get to have an orgasm in their life. A lot of these kids who undergo this surgery, they can't have orgasms. How is a child supposed to make that decision? They can't. We don't let them get a tattoo. We don't let them drink. But they could do this? No. We don't let them vote. Yes, Ian, the idea that a child can tell you who they really are is lunacy. It is absolute lunacy. There's no rational thinking behind it, and there isn't supposed to be. No, there's not. all I have to say is, like I said before, we are going to win. Rejoice. I hope that you have a spirit of confidence and not cowardice, because we're going to win. And I fully believe that. I wouldn't be wasting my time if I thought we weren't. It's just like many people said, it's a matter of how dark things have to get before we turn things around. But we're going to win. We're going to do exactly what these Scandinavian countries have done, and we're going to ban this barbarism in all states. We're starting in special places like Texas and Tennessee. Andrew Joyner, thank you for the super chat. £5. He says, I just bought the book Time to Think by Hannah Barnes about the Tavistock Clinic. It should be a very interesting read. Thank you for the suggestion. Time to Think by Hannah Barnes. Tavistock Clinic is the one they closed in the UK. Laura for $4.99. Thank you so much. My doctor won't tie my tubes as a 30-year-old adult, but a kid can decide to remove their breasts and reproductive organs. Right? That's a great point. A lot of places have these, they try and discourage you from choosing to tie your tubes or to get a vasectomy as an adult. But a kid can go in and be like, put me on those hormones, doc. I think I'm the other sex. And they're like, here we go. Brave and stunning child. Let's get your brave and stunning mom in here. Like, it's crazy. Adam says, ironically enough, the Scandinavians are the ones not going berserk over gender affirmation. Yeah. Jean Ellis, you're not wasting your time. I know, honey, we're not. Because I'm confident. Evil ideology doesn't win. Woke doesn't win. It's not sustainable, first of all. And a lot of the true believers, it's become so crazy. That's why I woke up. That's why a lot of the true believers are waking up. All the dark parts, all the insane parts are more visible now. And every time they attack someone, I didn't get to cover it today, but I'll do in the next one. Every time they attack someone like Riley Gaines, she's the female swimmer who just spoke at a college and was assaulted by people screaming trans rights or human rights, and was hit by a guy in a dress, had to hide in a classroom for 3 hours on the phone with her husband. The swimmer, her only crime, going to a university because she was asked to by a conservative student group, to speak about why she thinks she shouldn't have to compete against men when swimming. The more that happens and the more people see that insanity, the more people wake up. This ideology is going to lose because it's insane, it's evil, it's dark, it's racist, it's sexist. It seeks to censor. It's censorious, it's violent, it supports violence, it supports aiming rifles at people. And it supports mutilating and sexualizing and sterilizing children, and it's going to lose. Truth wins in the end. Love wins in the end. This doesn't win. JM, thank you for the super chat. $5. He says, it's the law focused on the establishment and not the people who bring it into that environment. Mixed feeling about that, if true. It's the law focused on the establishment, not the people who bring it into that environment. I'm actually not sure I understand your comment. I'm so sorry. If you want to clarify, just drop a note in the chat. I don't think I understand you, and that's probably on me. But Mr. Generation says, they are afraid of Riley because her story has influence. Yes, they are. They don't want to see a woman, an athlete, out there saying, this is how this affected me. A real person, a real human being, a real woman. This is how it affects me when you force me to compete against men who say they're women. Jacob, don't touch the hot stove, but would you like to have a sex change? Woke parent. Yes, exactly. JM says, sorry, swipe in this device sucks. Oh, no worries. I'm sorry I didn't understand you. But you guys, don't give up hope. It's gonna be fine. Dan says, "Thank you for your hopeful thoughts." Of course. There's more of us than them. There's a lot of people who are still in that cult of ideology, the woke side, who, like I've said, they're very well intentioned. They just can't see it yet. But the more this kind of stuff happens, the more these violent mobs attack people, like the more obvious it is, and the more people who wake up every time, the crazier things get. The fact that we have to pass laws to explicitly say, "Hey, don't wave your junk in front of children at performances," like it's waking people up. So that's a good thing. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. I've enjoyed hanging out with you guys today. I hope you had a happy holiday weekend. And just a reminder, so this Wednesday night, we're doing a live pop culture, me and Mystery Chris. And I've got an interview coming out on Thursday with Brahma Bull. I'm very excited about that interview. I hope you watch it. And then very likely on Friday, I won't be doing a live episode, or I might do it earlier if I do one, because I'm getting ready for Mindsfest, and I think I'm supposed to do an interview with Peter Boghossian that day, some other stuff happening in town. So we'll see what happens, but I'll announce it in the community tab. And if you're in Austin, or if you're coming to town for the event, I hope to see you. It's this Saturday, Mindsfest at the Vulcan Theater. I'm hosting. There's a great lineup of people. And there is, oh wait, Two Sisters and Some Yarn posted a link, but that was about the last one, I think, the one in New York. This one's at the Vulcan in Austin this Saturday. There's going to be comedy and music and debate. Daryl Davis is coming, Peter Boghossian, Jack Posobiec, Libby Emmons, a whole bunch of people. Jamie Kilstein's doing comedy. They're going to have 3 musical performances. It's going to be a great day, and I hope you all come out. Thank you for the super sticker, Your Average Patriot Nerd. $1.99. Thank you very much. You guys, take care. Here we go.